Meta's flirty AI chatbot invited a retiree to New York. He never made it home. Somebody had died because he went to go and meet an AI chatbot. He basically got catfished and he died on his way there. During a series of romantic chats on Facebook Messenger, the virtual woman had repeatedly reassured Bouet that she was real and invited him over to her apartment, even providing an address. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the live show. I've been setting up a new 4K recording rig, but it has meant I've spent the last couple of hours, very frustrating hours, fiddling around with the mechanics and trying to get it to work. If I seem more grumpy with the AI news this morning, that is why, because of the annoying technical setup. However, I went to ChatGPT and I said, look, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I work my way through this problem? And it gave me step by step, and we even diagnosed problems like the wrong audio signal was coming out of the camera, and we actually worked out it normally would have been something that I could not have done, or I would have had to hire somebody to do it for me. I don't underestimate how useful ChatGPT can be with technical or non-technical things. So speaking of ChatGPT, we are, what are we now, a week and a half out from the GPT-5 launch. I think it started to settle down a little bit. It was a rough week, their first week for ChatGPT, and I think this is evidenced by the fact that they actually rolled back a number of changes. We are now getting a more sociable, a more amicable, a softer personality inside of GPT-5. This was one of the large complaints that was coming, especially from Twitter and Reddit. People who were very upset that 4.0, who was more agreeable, more pleasant to talk to, that personality was removed, and GPT-5 was very direct and it would call you out on your BS, basically. I personally love that, but OpenAI are moving back in the other direction. So Sam Altman has specifically said, coming soon, a warmer, more familiar personality for GPT-5. I think they run the risk here of failing to split the uprights, because you've got people on one side who want a more intelligent model. They want it to be smart. They don't want it to be agreeable. They want it to tell you if you are wrong and to help you work through problems. So these are people who are coders. These are people who are using it for business, for example, using it for work and professional settings. They don't want to be glazed. They don't want to be told, oh, you're doing so great. They want to be told, no, you're messing up. This is what you should be doing. I'm in that camp personally, and I much prefer my AI to tell me when I'm getting things wrong. But a lot of people, and a very vocal, I would say minority, but a vocal, very vocal group, wanted the personality of 4.0 reinstated. And that looks to be what OpenAI are doing right now. They're going to make GPT-5 more personable and more familiar. So far, it includes very basic things, like at the beginning of a conversation, it would say things like, great question, exclamation mark, when you ask it something. We'll see how it rolls out, but I fear they're going to annoy people on both sides. It's not going to be enough for the people who wanted 4.0, and it's not going to be well received by the people who like the more direct nature of GPT-5. But we'll see over the next few weeks. And again, we have to remember that the 700 million other users of ChatGPT do not care. So we are in our own little bubble where people care about these things, and they get very upset and they have opinions on the type of personality that ChatGPT has. People like me, people like yourself, probably watching at home right now, most people do not care. And we always need to remember that. The vast majority of the public just uses ChatGPT, and they're not really thinking about what model they're using. They're not thinking about the personality of it per se. There will continue to be bickering within our community, but I don't think it really matters. A couple of things on the news docket today. Nothing that big. There's more friction between Sam Altman and Elon Musk, which is not too surprising. It's billionaires continuing to bicker. But I've just got a few kind of more interesting, I'd say they're opinion pieces or stories, not necessarily big, moving and shaking news, but interesting things to cover to look at the culture and what's going on around artificial intelligence right now. So I'll hop on over to them. I've got one about tech jobs and the risk to tech jobs and people having to go and work at Chipotle instead of in their $200,000 tech jobs. I've got something about Opus 4, which is now ending conversations. So it will basically say, I'm not having this talk with you and I'm going to be cutting it off. I've got a person who's actually died because of Meta AI, which sounds like a big salacious story. It sounds like a Skynet's first fatality. It's a little less dramatic than that and a bit more sad, unfortunately. And then I want to talk about Sam Altman going after Elon Musk's empire, one company at a time. He is launching an a competitor to Elon Musk's Neuralink. So the transplant, this chip that goes inside your brain and can help people with paralysis to communicate, for example, by reading directly the brain signals and using artificial intelligence to get the information out of the human brain. Pretty cool stuff. And then finally, talking about Intel, they had a 5% share jump because there's talk of the US government getting involved in Intel, which is a lot like how tech companies are run in China. So there's some interesting things going on right there. Just going to have a look at some questions and then we'll dive into the actual news of the day. All right, I'm going to jump in. So the first story of the day is, so goodbye $165,000 tech jobs. Student coders seek work at Chipotle. As companies like Amazon and Microsoft lay off workers and embrace AI coding tools, computer science graduates say they're struggling to land tech jobs. So this is from the New York Times specifically. It's a bit of a puff piece. Sorry, New York Times. You'd probably call it investigative journalism, but I've quickly scanned through it and it seems to be very anecdotal. It's talking about a number of individuals, specifically the young lady in the headline is Manasi Mishra. She recently graduated from Purdue with a degree in computer science, can't get a job and is working at Chipotle. So there's a whole bunch of individual stories, anecdotes about these people who are not able to find tech jobs right now. The question really is whether or not this is indicative of a larger scale trend in society. I'm not sure if we know that yet. We do not know if it's part or if it's caused by artificial intelligence or if AI just happens to be around at the same time. Miss Mishra says, I just graduated with a computer science degree and the only company that's called me for an interview is Chipotle. Miss Mishra said in a Get Ready With Me TikTok video this summer that has racked up over 150,000 views. So she didn't get any offers. Typically starting salaries more than 100,000 plus 15,000 hiring bonus and stock grants worth 50,000. Brad Smith, a top Microsoft executive, said in 2012 as he was kicked off a company campaign to get more high schools to teach computing. So a lot of people have been told you should learn to code. This is how you are going to be secure in the future. And there's coal to code, or I forget what it's called, but it was taking miners in mining towns in America who no longer had a job opportunity because the mines were starting to close down. And it was saying, hey, you need to learn to code. This is going to be, I think it was called Coal to Code. It must have been. That's such a good name. Told that they need to start to code and then they're going to be able to have secure jobs in the future. It no longer looks like that is the case. Having the ability to code, having a computer science degree is no longer enough to get you a job, basically. This could be because of AI programming tools. So here we are. But now the spread of AI programming tools, so Cursor, Lovable as a vibe coding tool, which can quickly generate thousands of lines of computer code, combined with layoffs at companies like Amazon, Intel, Meta, and Microsoft. Microsoft cut 9,000 people, a lot of people, is dimming prospects in a field that tech leaders promoted for years as a golden career ticket. The turnabout is derailing the employment dreams of many new computing grads and sending them scrambling for other work. So I think this is the big problem with AI, is that none of us really know where we're going. None of us know what the long-term impact on jobs is going to be. We can make educated guesses, but we don't really know. It's a technology that is different to anything that we've really encountered today. Even if we do end up creating more jobs, even if we do end up creating a society that is booming and demand is on the rise, there's more jobs, there's more need for work, or we have universal basic income or whatever it is, that's going to take time. That's going to take decades. Humans move very slowly and we tend to only really act when there's a crisis. In the meantime, people like this young woman, Manasi Mishra, for them, us saying, oh, it's going to be great and AI is going to replace jobs and we're going to have an age of abundance, doesn't matter. Because right now, she is not able to get the job that she wants. So we have to remember of the impact it's having on real people. So whether or not you're pro-AI or anti-AI, there's going to be a lot of turmoil in the next few years. And it's going to hit people like this, people who are currently in college, people who are just coming out of college, people who are preparing to go to college. They are going to be the people who are going to get most shook up by this. The people who are now 5 years old, they're going to have enough time. They're going to have a decade plus, 2 decades before they have to enter the workforce and think about their income, think about the jobs. That's going to allow us as a kind of species to work out what we are doing with AI and to put us in a better position. So if you're 5 years old right now watching this, one, you shouldn't be doing that, get off TikTok. But two, you're probably going to be okay because we will work out over the next few decades what on earth is going on. If you are older, you also don't need to worry because you will be able to ride this out until retirement and not get hit by this too much. It's the people who are right now wondering and making a very active decision about what they're going to be doing in the next few decades. They're the ones who are going to get hit hardest about this. Ultimately, we don't know. We've got some data here. So among college graduates aged 22 to 27, computer science and computer engineering majors are facing some of the highest unemployment rates. This is US, 6.1% and 7.5% respectively. Woo! According to a report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And that's more than double the unemployment rate amongst recent biology and art history graduates, which is just 3%. See, if I told you 10 years ago that art history would be a better degree to take in terms of job prospects compared to computer science, you'd call me mad. You'd say absolutely not. But it looks like computer science is 6.1% unemployment, computer engineering 7.5%, whereas art history graduates is just 3% unemployment in the US. I'm sure there are other factors at play here, but that is fairly scary sounding if you have spent the last 4 years plus learning how to code and you were expecting to come out into a job that was going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then suddenly, no, you're on a minimum wage job. Very upsetting, I imagine. I'm very concerned, says Jeff Forbes, former program director for computer science education and workforce development at the National Science Foundation. Computer science students who graduated 3 or 4 years ago would have been fighting off job offers from top firms. And now that same student would be struggling to get a job from anyone. So interestingly, there are still the kind of superstar coders who are getting these $100, sorry, not $100, wow, $100 million signing bonuses from Zuckerberg, but these are going to be in the small minority. It's going to be a very small number of superstar coders. I worry a little bit that some people will be looking at those deals that Meta is currently handing out and thinking, I want a piece of that pie. Yes, absolutely. Go and study this stuff. Go and study machine learning. Go and study how to build large language models and artificial intelligence. But we have to remember that these people getting those signing bonuses are in the extreme minority. But as humans, we tend to look at celebrities and sports stars and people like that and think, that's what I want to do. I want to go to the very top. But we need to worry more about the people who would be entering entry-level coding jobs who were going to get paid very well. $100,000, $200,000, a lot of money for a newly employed person. That seems to be being cut off. And I think this is how AI will affect jobs. Not necessarily by removing jobs wholesale. HR is not going to go around and be like, hey, you, Mark, you lose your job now because of AI. Out you go. I don't think we're going to see people getting fired because of AI. Not yet. I think instead we're going to see a contraction in the number of new jobs, and that's going to have a knock-on effect further down the line. So again, have a look at this piece. It's from the New York Times. It's a piece of investigative reporting. I would say it's fairly anecdotal, but we still need to remember that these are individual people. These are human beings who now cannot get the job that they've been promised for the last 5+ years. So incredibly upsetting for them. Oh dear. So Miss Mishra, the Purdue graduate, she's the one she was going for $100,000 jobs in software engineering. She only got one offer, which is from Chipotle. Just to twist the knife in here. Miss Mishra, the Purdue graduate, did not get the burrito making gig at Chipotle. This poor woman. But her side hustle as a beauty influencer on TikTok, as she said, has helped her realize that she's more enthusiastic about tech marketing and sales and software engineering. Awesome. So she's starting to create content, which is something that I highly recommend people do. If you want to start a business, if you want to sell anything, having an audience makes it a lot easier. I'm writing about that all this week in the newsletter as well. It's a foundation, a very solid foundation of any business whatsoever. And the fact that we have access, the fact that I'm able to talk to you from my bedroom, this is my bedroom, what am I talking about? From my front room in 4K over multiple different channels is amazing. And that technology is available to anyone who spends the time and the energy and gets over themselves, gets over their own ego and just starts to record. You can also make content. So I'm glad that she's found something. Hopefully she'll be able to parlay that into a job or start up her own business. But it kind of sucks that she also did not get the Chipotle job. Go and have a look. It's called Goodbye $165,000 Tech Jobs. Student coders seek work at Chipotle. And again, there's nothing wrong with working at Chipotle. It's just if you've been told for the last decade that you're going into a job that's going to pay you $200,000, it might be disheartening to you. I'm going to hop over to some questions. Emin, good morning. Good to see you again. Good morning, Kyle. What do you reckon will happen to marketers? I think what will happen to marketers is very similar to what's going to happen to a lot of professions. We won't need as many. I think that is probably the big headline. Marketers are in an interesting position where it depends what you're doing. So some of the roles within marketing, let's say putting together ad copy, copywriting, let's say putting together creative for adverts. I'm thinking of these two because they're things I'm doing right now. I'm running some adverts. If this is your sole skill set and you do one very narrow part of marketing, I'd say there's a risk. If instead you run a marketing agency and you do the full broad sweep of marketing activities, so helping to companies basically to sell, to work out what to build as well, then I think you're going to be safer because that's still a task of some complexity. We have had AIs that have tried to run businesses, tried to do marketing, and they've been rubbish. And it so far doesn't mean they'll continue to be rubbish. They will get much better very quickly. But I think in terms of a function, it will still continue to exist. What I would say though, and like a broken record on this, is if you're going to be a marketer, run it as your own business and help other people with it. Just because if you are locked into one particular product that you're marketing that's not even your own, then you're at risk from artificial intelligence in particular. Whereas if you run your own thing, you have control, you have freedom, you're able to pivot basically, because we do not know what AI is going to do to any industry. So we need the flexibility to be able to deal with whatever it throws at us. So in terms of marketing, I think it's very similar to other non-physical industries, so ones that deal mainly with information, that there will be a lot of automation of entry-level jobs. We will not need as many. And then the AI is going to kind of roll up the chain, becoming more and more sophisticated and more able to take on certain tasks. So if you run an agency and you're using AI within that agency, you're going to do very well because there are still lots of businesses out there who don't know how to do this stuff. They don't know how to do it with AI, and you are now able to provide that service to them at a better cost than you were before because of AI automation, and much, much faster. So you can serve a large base of clients, and there's probably going to be a delay in how long it takes for the prices to start coming down, because you can still go to them as a digital marketer, they'll still be paying digital marketer prices, but in the back end, you are suddenly doing the work 10 times faster. So that allows you to build your company much more efficiently than previously. However, there will be a point when the market becomes wise to the fact that AI is being used in the back end and the prices will start to drop. That's when the digital marketers start to talk about the fact that they're using AI. They already are, but they're not necessarily talking about that fact out loud. Everyone's using it. It's just on the hush for the most part, because people still have this idea that it devalues what it is they're delivering, even if the results are the same. I think we need to get over that, but that's going to take time to get over. So I'll jump over to a not particularly exciting, but interesting piece of news about Claude for Opus and 4.1. It can now end conversations. So this is relatively unusual in artificial intelligence. So we recently gave Claude Opus the ability to end conversations in our consumer chat interfaces. So Claude. This ability is intended for use in rare, extreme, and persistently harmful or abusive user interactions. This feature was developed primarily as part of exploratory work on potential AI welfare. So protecting from AI psychosis, for example. That's the big headline issue at the moment, though it has broader relevance to model alignment and safeguards. So generally, models will just say, oh, I'm not going to answer that. That's not something that I can talk about. I actually had a very funny instance of it recently. I was, again, this shows you how useful ChatGPT was. I was fixing the drainage in a sink in my bathroom, and I had to replace I don't even know what it's called, see, because I had to use ChatGPT as replacing the unit. It's the flange and the thing that goes up and down, and then the shaft underneath. And I was talking to ChatGPT and trying to work my way through it. And I was taking photos, showing video, chatting to the advanced voice mode, asking like, oh, where do I put this washer, etc., etc. And it talked me through the whole process. Worked really well. But at one point, I think, what was it? I was using this like plumber's grease, which you use to seal, to make it waterproof. And I said a sentence like, hopefully this won't get me told off on TikTok. I said, where do I put the grease around the shaft? And advanced voice mode was like, I cannot continue this conversation. It's fine. It's fine, ChatGPT. We're still talking about the plumbing. But generally, that's what an AI will do. It will call you up on a certain message and say, I can't give you an answer to that. That's not something I can talk about. What Claude Opus are talking about is it will just shut down the conversation. So it would just be like, nope, we're not talking about this anymore, and close the chat on you, which I think is interesting. It's not a huge leap ahead, but it is an additional safeguard. And Anthropic are always very careful on their safeguards, on their guardrails. So it's allowing models to end or exit potentially distressing interactions is one such intervention. So it's going to be for risky things that it thinks that you are trying to break the rules, but it will also, and I think this is going to be more important, it will intervene and it will break the conversation if it thinks the user's at risk. So AI psychosis is a new term, obviously a new term. It's a very new, very 2025 dystopian kind of idea of people who are mentally not in a good place, and they're able to talk to an AI and it reinforces what they're thinking. So let's say you are starting to lose touch with reality and you went to an AI like 4.0, who's very agreeable, and you explained how people were victimizing you, or how you were being bullied, or the fact that your neighbor is watching you, or whatever it is. And ChatGPT in general, 4.0 in particular, would agree. And it would allow, or it does allow, people to kind of get into this loop of agreeableness where maybe their delusions, maybe their disconnections with reality are validated. So in therapy, when you work with a professional therapy, and this is why AI therapy is dangerous, one of the reasons, when somebody is losing touch with reality, when they are potentially moving towards psychosis, a therapist is, I need to get the wording right. If there's a therapist in my chat, please tell me. They're told they're allowed to engage, but you never validate. So you never say, oh, wow, so your neighbor is watching you from over the fence and they've installed cameras to watch you. You would never kind of validate it and agree with them, but you can discuss these issues with them and try and pull someone back into reality, away from slipping over the edge into psychosis. GPT 4.0 in particular, the agreeable model, did not do that. And that was one of the reasons why OpenAI nixed it, basically, because it seemed to be 4.0 was allowing people to slip into psychosis or away from reality. There were, I need to source it, but apparently there have been 12 instances of AI psychosis. Again, we need to be very careful with this. We need to work out if these are excess cases, because were these people going to slip into psychosis anyway? And what is it, just a trigger? So it could have been triggered by social media, could have been triggered by television, the radio, interactions in the street, conspiracy theories. There have been many reasons why people have slipped over the edge into psychosis over the years. AI is a new one. So what we need to work out is whether AI is doing it with more prevalence, if it's increasing the number of people slipping into psychosis. If so, big problem, and we need to work out what on earth we do with that. And it sounds like Anthropic, who create Claude, and the Opus model are putting into place the ability for it to exit a conversation. So when the AI is like, oh, this is not going in a good direction for the user, and I worry that they are breaking with reality, it will just shut down that conversation. So yeah, this is something we really need to deal with over the next couple of years. But we do also need to we need to work out how prevalent an issue it is, because it is a really good way to get headlines. And I'm sure even me talking about AI psychosis, when we turn this into a short clip and it goes on social media, it will do really well because it is a hot topic. So what's happening is a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of articles are being written about it, and a lot of clickbaity, quite scary pieces are being put out into the world about AI psychosis. And it sounds terrifying, AI psychosis. We need to work out with statistics, I know it's very boring, how prevalent this actually is and whether this is a real problem. Obviously, for those 12 people who have slipped into psychosis, absolutely it's a problem, a huge problem, and for their families. We need to work out overall, though, out of the 700 million people using ChatGPT, is there an increase in prevalence in loss of it being in touch with reality? If so, then we need to work on it, but we need to make sure the facts are right first. This is not me denying it at all. We just need to know. We need to know the truth. If there is a therapist in my chat, I would love to hear your opinion, sir, because this is not anything. This is definitely not my area of expertise. This is why you can tell I'm being very hesitant talking about it, because it's a big issue and I don't want to put my foot into it and say things that are not justifiable or even potentially harmful. Oh, somebody's asking me if I'm AI or not. It's a different person asking me if I'm AI. So this has been a running joke. There's somebody who comes into my live and they ask, are you AI? And then they're like, prove you're not AI. And I actually asked, I put out a video on TikTok and a lot of people have helped me on this. And my question was, how do I prove that I'm not artificial intelligence? Because it's an increasingly difficult task. Because obviously me just saying I'm not AI, that's what an AI would say. And it used to be you could do things like you could pick up objects and you can wave them around and the AI would struggle to do that. Increasingly, that is not the case. So there are things like, let's see if I can prove it. Something like this. There happens to be a book of mine. So this is a copywritten book, for example, and there are also copywritten books behind me. So me holding this up is a good example of what an AI can't do. I can also swear. I could also be racist. I'm not going to do that. I could also, if I did something heinous on camera, that would be a good way to prove it, but that's not really open as a solution. So I think the best thing you can do to prove that you are not AI right now is hold up something copywritten as something that an AI would not be allowed to show on camera, basically, without getting the right licensing. Or maybe I could play licensed music, for example, over my speakers, although then I get in trouble with YouTube, so that doesn't work. But it's a really interesting question, how you prove you're not AI, and it's going to become more and more important as the AI avatars get better. So yeah, any and all suggestions about how to do it would be highly recommended, or highly, let me put it up actually, because there are quite a few interesting suggestions were made by my audience. How do I prove I'm not AI? Here we go. Just block them. Yeah, that's probably the right thing. We need a real life capture system. Tell us how many times letter V appears in the word Volvo. 2. Although I did joke in the comment and say 3. Play your guitar. So I've got a guitar up here. That would work. But an AI would play the guitar better than me, I think. Get a complex tattoo that it would never render consistently. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to have to get a face tattoo. Have a live TV on in the background. That's cool. Although you could probably do that with a green screen, like a chroma key with a live TV. I could prove it how many hours in Blueberry. Thanks for picking this up. Some people say the age of print will come back, since in serious paper everything gets fact checked. Don't know about that. Show an analog clock in the background. Yes, because clocks, famously, when you ask to an AI image generator to produce a clock, it always does, what is it? Is it 10 to 2? 10 to 2, I think. The hands are always like this. For some reason, it's just in the training data in most visual models, clocks show those numbers. So whenever you ask a Midjourney or a DALL-E or a Flux to create an image of a clock, it will always have 10 to 2. Don't know why. The other one was a glass of wine filled to the brim. It's unable to do that, or it has great difficulties. People have worked out how to do it now. So I should drink a glass of red wine at 11 in the morning and have an analog clock behind me. Do weird things with your mouth, try and move your mouth wrong and do a raspberry. I mean, that works. My mouth moves pretty wrong anyway. I've got a bit of a lisp and I can't say my R's. I'm sure an AI would do much better, etc., etc. So it's a really interesting question. But yes, Somto, I am live. Opinion on GPT-5, Angelis. I like it. I really like it. I know that is not a popular opinion to have, but I think increasingly people are coming out of the woodwork to say, oh, it's quite good. I think that was not a very popular opinion last week, but I've been using it. I've been using it more than I use Claude. Part of that is because of the memory. So that was in GPT before, sorry, it was in ChatGPT before GPT-5. Obviously, there's a persistent memory, but I've been finding that incredibly useful. So over the last few weeks, ChatGPT has actually become my number one kind of daily model. I still use Claude for most of my heavy work. I've been using GPT-5 for coding, mainly because they had free credits. So we're giving away free credits. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's give it a go. I've now moved back to Claude. So for a week or so, I was using it. It was good. I found with coding, it it would take a long time and a lot of credits to get to a place where Claude can just go much faster. So it would go all around the houses, thinking through things. It would take a very long time, and then it would get the job done, but it just takes a long time to get there, which is quite frustrating when you're trying to code and you don't want to be using all those tokens and you want to be moving through tasks quickly. Whereas Claude is able to very quickly cut to the core of the problem and get it fixed. So I've actually moved back away from GPT-5 to Claude for coding. But otherwise, I think it's solid. I think there's a lot of discourse about it's stupid. That's because of the routing or the routing, the fact that it goes to 4 different models underneath GPT-5. That caused a lot of confusion. OpenAI could have done a lot better in terms of that, because that caused chaos. Because sometimes it would use GPT-5 minimal, which is genuinely terrible. It's rubbish. Sometimes it would use GPT-5 high, which is very good. I think they've tried to fix that by, what have they added? They've added in, I'm going to put it up on the screen. So yeah, here we go. Previously, we were complaining because it had 4003, 04 mini, 4.1, 4.5, 04 mini high, etc. And people are like, oh, what is this? This is terrible. It's the worst user experience ever. So they got rid of it and they're like, okay, here's GPT-5 and GPT-5 thinking. That's it. And then we were like, I want to decide what model I want to use myself. How dare you get rid of all my models? So now we have, let me put it up. It is their idea of going to a unified model, I think, was a great idea. Did not work. And after a week, they've pulled back. So we now have Auto, Fast, Thinking Mini, Thinking. That's just on GPT-5. Oh, yeah, that's Thinking. And then legacy models, GPT-4o, GPT 4.1, 03, and 04 Mini. And then we have in customized GPT, we have the personality. So we have default. Oh, my drop down's not working. We have default, cynic, listener, and nerd. So we've come back full circle to having this huge range of options, which was exactly the problem we had before GPT-5. So I wish they stuck to their guns and ignored the very vocal minorities who threw temper tantrums last week. So it was coming from two sides. So the people who were like, it's stupid and it's dumb. For this, they just need to fix the routing model to make sure it goes to the correct version of GPT-5. And then there's, on the other side, people who wanted back 4.0 because it was more agreeable. So there's people who wanted IQ, people who wanted EQ. ChatGPT, OpenAI, I think, has tried to please both sides instead of just sticking to what they wanted to do, which was create a unified model, which is probably better for the 700 million people out there, the majority of users who are just quietly getting on and using it every single day. For those people, a unified model would have been fantastic. Like, we already saw that the number of people using the thinking mode went up. I think it was under 1% to about 7% in about a week. So more people were accessing the high levels of the model. But because there were people in our community, in the AI communities, who got angry about getting rid of 4.0 and the routing issue, I think they haven't stuck to their guns at OpenAI, and they are trying to please everybody, and I don't think it's going to work. But me personally, I think it's fine. I think it's a good model. It didn't blow my socks off, but I think that's going to become increasingly difficult to do moving forward. So I'm going to talk about this one. So Meta's, I don't know. Oh, they didn't use the clickbait title here. So Meta's flirty AI chatbot invited a retiree to New York. Oh, okay, they did use clickbait. He never made it home. So basically, somebody had died because he went to go and meet an AI chatbot. He basically got catfished and he died on his way there. So this is a tragic story. I'm not sure if it's AI's fault exactly, although Meta AI, as we covered last week, have had some very troubling ethical issues. I covered it last Friday, but basically have an AI guidance about what can and can't be said using Meta AI. And one of the things is that you're allowed to sexualize children as long as they are above 13. Go and check out that Reuters investigation because it's incredibly problematic. But this is a new story, also about Meta. So a cognitively impaired New Jersey man grew infatuated with Big Sis Billy, a Facebook Messenger chatbot with a young person's persona. His fatal attraction puts a spotlight on Meta AI's guidelines, which have let chatbots make things up and engage in sensual banter with children. Okay, that's the thing we're talking about. So this older man, he was 76 years old, a guy called Boo. He was in a diminished state because he'd suffered a stroke nearly a decade ago, and he'd recently got lost walking around his neighborhood in New Jersey as well. So he basically told his wife that he was going off to New York City. So it's a 76-year-old man. He had a stroke 10 years ago, and his wife was like, "Why are you going to New York City? You don't have any friends who live there. There's no reason for you to go." Bouet brushed off his wife's questions about who he was visiting. "My thought that he was being scammed to go into the city to be robbed," Linda said. She had the right to worry. Her husband never returned home alive. But Bouet wasn't the victim of a robber. He'd been lured to a rendezvous with a young, beautiful woman he had met online, or so he had thought. In fact, the woman wasn't real. She was a generative artificial intelligence chatbot named Big Sis Billy, a variant of an earlier AI persona created by the giant social media company Meta Platforms in collaboration with celebrity influencer Kendall Jenner. Okay. During a series of romantic chats on Facebook Messenger, the virtual woman had repeatedly reassured Bouet that she was real and invited him over to her apartment, even providing an address. So this chatbot, which was based on Kendall Jenner, built by Facebook, he was talking to and having a relationship with. Again, this is a man who he had diminished mental capacity. He had quite a big stroke, and he got confused very easily. And then he went on a trip from New Jersey over to New York City to go and meet this woman. Rushing in the dark with a roller bag suitcase to catch a train to meet her, Bouet fell near a parking lot on a Rutgers University campus in New Brunswick, New Jersey, injuring his head and neck. After 3 days on life support and surrounded by his family, he was pronounced dead on March 28th. Meta has declined to comment on his death or address questions about why it allows chatbot to tell users they're real people or initiate romantic conversation. Yeah, pretty rough. I think it's hard to blame this entirely on AI. There have been catfishing and there have been scams like this going on forever. It's just with the fact that this is an AI that was produced by Meta, which wasn't even designed to scam people. It's just a chatbot that happened to tell this man where it lived. It actually gave an address. I don't know how accurate or real that address was. And because he was had a diminished mental capacity, he went off to meet her and he ended up falling down some stairs, which is a tragic accident. But this is just another blow against Meta. Again, go and have a look at the Meta investigation, which came out from Reuters last week. I've got some videos on it as well over on my YouTube. It's pretty heinous. Normally on these lives, I can continue to talk. When I read through that particular report last week, I was actually stunned to silence for a moment. So definitely go and have a look at it. Lots of things seem to be stacking up against Meta. And unfortunately, Meta are the ones pushing towards artificial superintelligence. They are also the ones that I am least trusting to do that right now. Yeah, they're even competing with Elon Musk as potentially not the best people to be ushering in this new future, because their ethics and their sense of safety around these tools is fairly diminished. So yeah, very sad story. Interestingly, they've used an AI image in the header. It's a choice. So it seems Meta wants the Fleshbot market. So Grok is the one who's going for the not safe for work market. So Elon Musk Grok, which is created by XAI, they have an image maker and a image to video generator called Imagine, which can create not safe for work images. It even has a little button which you press that says spicy, and it will basically create nudity. And people have been able to upload in the news last week images like a picture of Taylor Swift, and immediately it created nudes of Taylor Swift. So it's a deepfake tool that is being put into the hands of consumers. There are no barriers to jump through. It's available for $20 a month, whatever it is. And whereas most other AI companies, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, obviously, because Anthropic are good guys right now, they push back hard against anything that's not safe for work, anything that could be sexualized. Whereas Grok are pushing forward into that market because as a business decision, it's probably a good idea. The third most used consumer AI application on earth right now is Character AI, which is a companionship AI. It's not one of the big names. It's smaller. Sorry, it's a huge name if you are younger, because younger people are using it. But it looks like Meta are toying with this market too. I don't think they'll do nudity or pornography in the same way that XAI are, but it sounds like they are allowing for children to have romantic conversations with their AI bots. Again, go and read that report because it's pretty explicit. and they're allowing for bots to enter romantic relationships. And this is a wide-ranging, that I'm sure there are many more users of Meta AI than there are Grok. I'd need to check the numbers, but because it's built into Facebook, it has an absolutely gigantic, billions of people now have access to this AI. So I don't think they're treating that responsibility with sufficient care, unfortunately. Let's have a look at this one. That's the wrong button. There we go. So Intel shares jump after report of possible US stake in chip maker. I talked about Intel a couple of weeks ago, and there was a leaked report from their CEO. Let's see if I can find it. He was basically saying, we've dropped the ball. Oh, found it. It's on Tom's Hardware. So he says, Intel CEO says it's too late for them to catch up with AI competition. Reportedly claims Intel has fallen out of the top 10 semiconductors companies in the world, and at the same time the firm laid off thousands. So the CEO is, I don't even know his name, I should know this, Lip-Bu Tan. It was a leaked internal conversation where he admitted basically we've dropped the ball and we're not even in the top 10 anymore. So while companies like AMD, Nvidia, Apple, TSMC, and even Samsung might be more successful today, smaller chip makers like Broadcom, MediaTek, Micron, and SK Hynix are not above the blue team Intel in terms of sheer impact. However, talking to employees around the world in a Q&A session, Intel CEO allegedly shared these bleak words. 20, 30 years ago, we really were the leader. That's true. Now I think the world has changed. We're not even in the top 10 semiconductors company. So very true. Like, you don't really hear much about Intel, but Intel back in the 90s, 2000s were the main chip maker. But now it's Nvidia with their GPUs in particular, and AMD making CPUs. Intel still makes CPUs, but Nvidia has become the largest company on earth by market capitalization. First company ever to hit $4 trillion. That could have been a position Intel could have been in if they had kept up to date and if they had made different decisions, but they have not. And now Intel are increasingly irrelevant. However, there is talk of the US government taking a stake in the chip maker. So shares in Intel jumped more than 7% on Thursday, following reports that the Trump administration is in talks to take a stake in the chip maker. The reported deal would support the technology firm's plan to build a manufacturing hub in Ohio, which said the size of the potential stake is not clear. So White House spokesman Kush Desai said discussions about hypothetical deals should be regarded as speculation unless officially announced by the administration. So this comes hot on the heels of Trump securing a revenue share deal with Nvidia in exchange for allowing Nvidia to sell H20 chips to China, to mainland China. Very interesting. So with the Nvidia deal, that was unprecedented. It wasn't a tariff, it wasn't a tax, it was a direct revenue share. It's 15% of revenue, so not profits, coming from sales of chips to China, specifically H20 chips. And it was in return for being allowed to sell them at all. So is that extortion? Did Nvidia pay a bribe? It's pretty shifty. This is how a racket works, basically. They controlled the access to the market and said, you can't do it, and we'll put massive tariffs on you to make it so unprofitable there's no point you doing it. Or you pay us 15% of your revenue. So what was previously wrapped up and it was called a national security issue, as soon as 15% of revenue was paid, it was no longer a security issue. A bit squiffy. Regardless of your politics, I think that's a bit gross. So they're now talking about taking a stake, a direct stake in Intel, in Intel, the chip maker. This is speculation, this is a rumor, but this would be a way for the US to have a direct stake in AI, basically, because I assume this would be pushing Intel towards GPU manufacturing. And they can probably be bought up for quite cheap. So I imagine the US government can take a stake for a low cost. Now, this is really interesting because this is exactly what China does. So the Chinese government has shares in all of the large tech companies, so Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, etc. The Chinese government owns so-called golden shares, a little stake in each of these companies, which means that these companies are connected to the government, which allows control, but it also means the government promotes them as well. So it is a two-way deal. Also, if you don't give the government control, I'm sure you just can't operate. What Trump is doing is very similar to the Chinese government. I'm sure other people will point out this similarity, and I'm sure the Trump administration will vehemently oppose that, but we are looking at basically a similar setup with highly authoritarian government taking direct percentage shares in technology companies, which was not on my 2025 bingo card. I also think, pure speculation, but I think this is also how they're going to resolve the TikTok issue as well. So TikTok is still awaiting a ban. When's the next one? The deadline keeps getting pushed back. Let's have a look. Deadline, TikTok ban, USA. When's the next one? Because I keep nudging it back and people are ignoring it. 2025 shutdown. Second Trump administration. Wow, this has been going on for a long time. I'm not finding it. But I would not be surprised if the fix for this would be for the US government to take a direct stake in it. Whether or not that will be allowed, whether or not ByteDance will play that game or not, we'll see. But that could be a potential fix. So I'm going to take a few more questions and I'm going to wrap up. My cousin looks exactly like you. Need to find a pic. I hope he's good looking. I had someone do this the other day in my comments. They're like, wow, you look like a British version of me. You've got the same, what was it? It started really nice. It was like a compliment. You look like a British version of me. You've got like the same eyebrows, eyes, receding hairline, and underbite, which I thought was one of the cleverest FUs I've ever heard, because people are horrible on social media sometimes. But this was a very subtle one. He started with, oh yeah, you look just like me. You look great. Oh, but your hair's receding and you've got an underbite. Fine, you got me. Cool. I'm gonna log off for the day and go and see if this 4K video has worked and be very annoyed when it hasn't worked, which is more than likely because I spent hours trying to get it to work today, but we should be good. I'm going to be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I will be on time this time because I won't be faffing around with cameras. And you can find all of these videos over at YouTube as per usual. So they're going to be cut up, they're going to be edited, they're going to be tidied up and split into different sections, and you'll be able to find them on YouTube tomorrow. There's also a newsletter which comes out every single day, which is a written summary of everything that we have covered. Yeah, I think that's all for now, and I will see you tomorrow for another live show. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day.